All right, let's talk about an herb that's got a reputation going back thousands of years. One that promises to boost vitality, passion, and, well, a whole lot more. Of course, I'm talking about ginseng.
You've probably heard of it, right? For centuries, it's been hailed as this powerful aphrodisiac, a key to sexual health. But what happens when that ancient wisdom gets put under the harsh light of a modern microscope? Is there actually any scientific truth to the legend?
Okay, so to really get into it, we need to start at the beginning. We're talking specifically about Panax Ginseng, the one you'll also hear called Asian or Korean ginseng. This is where the story really gets going.
So what's the secret sauce here? Well, it all comes down to these unique active compounds called Ginsenosides. And get this, scientists have found over 100 of them. The wild part is, their potency can totally change depending on how the root is handled. Steaming it creates what's known as red ginseng, which a lot of studies point to as having a more powerful chemical profile than just drying it into white ginseng.
Okay, so we know what's in it, but how does it supposedly work inside our bodies? Well, when you look at the early research, the lab and animal studies, it seems to point to three main ways it could be affecting us.
Now, this first one is probably the most well-documented. It's called the nitric oxide pathway. In simple terms, the idea is that ginsenosides help your body produce more nitric oxide. This, in turn, relaxes the smooth muscles in erectile tissues, and yes, that's in both men and women, which lets more blood flow in. Now, if that whole process sounds familiar, it should. It's the exact same system that prescription drugs like Viagra target. Pretty interesting, right? But it's not just a plumbing issue, There might be more to it. Animal studies hint that ginsenosides could also be tinkering with our brain chemistry. Things like dopamine, which is all about desire, and acetylcholine, which is tied to arousal. And while some animal research showed a testosterone boost, that whole idea gets a lot fuzzier and less convincing once you start looking at the actual human trials.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what happens when we look at actual human trials with men? This is where things get really, really fascinating, because a genuine puzzle starts to take shape.
So, if you rewind to 2008, a big review of the existing studies looked pretty promising. It found suggestive evidence that ginseng worked for erectile dysfunction. But then, 2021 rolls around and we get a Cochrane review. And if you don't know, a Cochrane review is like the Super Bowl of medical evidence. It's the gold standard. They looked at 9 different trials, and their conclusion? On the official clinical scales, the effect was trivial. Basically, not big enough to be considered clinically important. And this right here is the paradox in a nutshell. It's wild. On one side, you have the official, super detailed clinical questionnaire, the tool doctors use, and it's saying, meh, not much of a change. But on the other side, when you just ask the men a simple, direct question, hey, did this help you have intercourse? The answer was a resounding yes. Just how clear of a yes was it? Well, the men taking ginseng were over 2.5 times more likely to report that it helped them compared to the guys taking a placebo. So even though the clinical data didn't hit some magic threshold, the users themselves felt like it was working. That's a huge disconnect, and it's right at the heart of this whole story.
Okay, so we've got a paradox for men. But hold on, because when we turn to the research on women, the plot gets even thicker. It seems like for women, ginseng's effectiveness isn't a sure thing at all. It really, really depends on who is taking it.
Just look at these 2 key studies. They seem to tell completely opposite stories. Back in 2010, a trial on premenopausal women found nothing really. The placebo was just as powerful. But then, a much more recent study from 2024 looked at a totally different group, postmenopausal women who are also dealing with major depression. And for them, the results were the polar opposite, a clear, statistically significant improvement way beyond the placebo. This contrast gives us a massive clue about how ginseng might work in women. It's not acting like some straightforward female Viagra. Instead, its effect seems to be, well, context-dependent. It's not working as a direct switch to turn things on. It's acting more like a restorative agent. It seems to help with the underlying problems, like menopausal symptoms, and by addressing those, sexual health can improve more naturally.
So we've got a paradox in men, context-dependent effects in women. I know, it's a lot. So after all this, where does that leave us? What can we say for sure?
Okay, first things first, and this is something almost all the research agrees on: safety. Panax ginseng is generally very well tolerated. The side effects that do pop up are mild. We're talking things like indigestion, and they happen just as often in the placebo groups. So that's a big check mark in the safe column. But, and this is a big but, we absolutely have to be cautious about the claims of how well it works.
The truth is, the whole body of research is filled with limitations. Many of the studies are really small, some have a high risk of bias, meaning we can't fully trust the results, and they're almost all short-term. On top of all that, nobody's using the same ginseng, different types, different doses. It makes comparing studies a total nightmare.
So here's the bottom line from a scientific point of view. Ginseng is not a magic bullet. It's not some simple, powerful aphrodisiac that's going to work for everybody every time. Instead, it seems to be something way more complex, way more subtle. The modest benefits it offers appear to be real for some people, but it really depends on what's going on in their body to begin with.
And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. For thousands of years, we've thought of ginseng as a stimulant, something that creates passion. But what if all this science is pointing to something different? What if its real power isn't about creating desire from thin air, but about restoring the balance in our bodies and minds that allows desire to flourish all on its own?